Chapter 31. The Cavern. Solo was in the zone. He forgot to even announce the title of the chapter or ask if anyone wanted to turn. He just kept reading. "Start what?" asked Solo. "Did I say start?" asked Godot. "I meant it's time for us to go." "Go where?" asked Solo. "Over 1,000 years ago, I promised to visit someone. Today is as good a day as any to fulfill my promise. So let's head her way and we'll see if she's home." Solo smiled at Godot, but inside he felt a little dejected that his second training adventure was only to visit one of Godot's friends. Then again, his mother had said that Godot was a lot more clever than he seemed. Perhaps Godot's friend is part of the training, he thought. The tunnels outside Again Station were really low, meaning that both Solo and Godot had to crawl on their hands and knees, or paws, had, meaning that both Solo and Godot had to crawl quite a bit. Solo wasn't at all sure if they were safe. There was something ominous about the whole journey. After a while, they reached a cavern. Godot told Solo it was home to the deep lagoon. "If we both dive down to the bottom," said Godot, "we'll reach my friend's home." "How deep is it?" asked Solo, staring at the lagoon. The water looked cold and uninviting. "It'll take all the air in your lungs to get there, but you should be okay. Nell tells me you're a great diver." "Did Mum say that?" asked Solo. "She says that you and Toll love diving around with jellyfish," said Godot. "We dive a lot in summer," said Solo. "Our holiday home is at the Bay of Magic Sea Dragons." "Good," said Godot. "The place we're going to visit is magic, so don't be surprised if strange things happen." "You mean none of this has been magic so far?" asked Solo. "The best," said Godot, his eyes laughing. "Now, when you're ready, take a deep breath, dive in, and go down as far as you can. Once you get really deep, you'll see a small light. That's when you have to be really brave and keep going. When you get to the light, you'll be able to breathe again. But it does take great courage because your mind will be telling you to go back." "Okay," said Solo, not sounding very convinced. "When your lungs are ready to explode," said Godot, "you'll burst into the royal cavern." "The royal cavern," Solo repeated. Murmured Godot, staring at his reflection in the purplish black pond. "That's where she lives." "Who?" "My friend," said Godot with a grin. Then, without warning, he jumped into the water and disappeared into the depths. Solo decided that he'd better follow Godot right away in case he got lost. Once Solo was under the water, he almost lost his nerve right away. Endless strands of thick green weed wrapped themselves around his legs. They were slimy and cold. Solo kicked hard to get away from the stuff, but the further down he went, the thicker the weed became. Why hadn't Godot mentioned it? Solo swept his hands out widely to get as deep as he could, but he was running out of breath. Oh, where was the little light? Just as he thought he'd have to turn back, Solo saw a dim circle far ahead. Did he have enough breath to make it? Did he have enough breath to go back to the surface? His head began to swirl around and he thought he might faint. Swimming urgently, he headed for the light without thinking about anything else. The pain in his lungs was almost killing him. He felt as if he'd burst. If he had to hold his breath another second. Then, just as he was convinced that he'd simply have to swallow some water, he exploded through the circle of light into air. Fresh, glorious air. He lay on a rock floor with Godot staring down at him, his tongue hanging out and his mouth curved into an enormous grin. "How was that?" he asked. "Terrifying," Solo spluttered. "How do we get back?" "Same way," said Godot, "but it's much easier because your mind knows that it's possible the second time around." Solo rolled his eyes. "How comforting," he said. Godot barked loudly. "Where are we?" asked Solo, looking around at the enormous cavern. Godot began to climb the walls of the gigantic cave. After several minutes, he sat on one of two large stone chairs carved into the rock wall high above Solo. The walls were inlaid with a glowing substance, as was the floor. Solo felt sure it was Emash, but before he could ask, there was a loud trumpet fanfare. What was that? Asked Solo. I'd come up here now if I were in your shoes, said Godot, ignoring Solo's question. I'm just having a look at these stones. Do you know what they are? Called Solo. Just as he spoke, the cavern lit up like a Christmas tree. Tiny fairy lights appeared everywhere. What's going on? Asked Solo. So many questions, said Godot. Don't you realize that many things will just explain themselves after a while? And it would be best to come up here now, right now, actually. One of the tiny fairy lights flew over to Solo's ear and whispered, I'm an amphibious flying glowfish. My name is Max. I'm Solo Dew, said Solo. Pleased to meet you. Solo Dew, boomed an enormous voice. That trumpet fanfare was to announce my imminent arrival.